Previously on the Fanboys.
Whenever I go back and listen to this, it's probably go.
I think Oklahoma Wesleyan and Southwestern are going to be top 10 teams in the country this year.
Yeah, and Jake, they've really been on an island of identity loss.
And he's just a dick. I mean, he's just an asshole.
But my college takeaway, Jake, is that it was upset weekend. Or am I the only one that notices that Bama, for being in the SEC, doesn't play anybody?
I love what he did for the Cowboys. The Cowboys not winning a Super Bowl with him is by far the biggest failure in franchise history.
The NBA is back, and NBA Twitter is the most annoying thing in the world. And really, at this point in the season in October, who gives a fuck? And I just wanted to say that they will lose to the Washington Redskins on the road this week.
His ceiling, if you want me to compare him to a player, his ceiling's Brian Urlacher.
Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, dude.
Oh, yeah,
it worked out great for the Patriots.
And a child walking into a bar. Awesome.
And welcome to episode 9 of the Fanboys. We are fans talking as fans for the fans. And Jake, we've got a great show in store. I think it's going to be a really good episode. I'm really looking forward to it. We've got SC having their first winning season in we don't know how long, but it's been a long time. We've got, of course, our college and NFL takeaways. We're going to do our all-time favorites list. We started last week with quarterbacks. We're going to resume it and pick it up where we left off with the running backs. Again, those are favorite running backs, not necessarily who we think are the best running backs. Of course, we've got our talking points as always, and we've got in the second segment, we've got a new game, Devil's Advocate. It is about the Amari Cooper trade with Dallas Cowboys, and we both want to make ourselves clear. Jake, I know you want to make yourself clear on something.
Yes. So when we do this segment, I'm going to play the side that basically is saying the Amari Cooper trade is good or not as bad as other people are saying, even though I'm not a huge fan of the trade itself. So I just want to make that clear, but I just think it's good to kind of look at both sides of a debate, and I think that is a very hot topic debate right now.
Yes, I totally agree. And, of course, Jake will also have his a very short film session, and it will not be over the Cowboys. So for all you Cowboy haters out there, you'll probably actually stay tuned to the end of the show and listen to what he has to say about that. And I will not name the player until we get there. And, yeah, Jake, that's going to end us off with the show. So let's get this thing started. Episode 9 is going to be a great one, everybody. SC football, we'll start off there as we always do. And Jake, their first winning season, they have 6 wins. They cannot finish 500 or under 500 for the first time in a very, very, very long time.
And more importantly, we're starting to see them consistently beat teams they should beat. They've been able to take care of, teams like Tabor this year, who Tabor is not that powerhouse that we've seen in previous years, and then now take care of Bethel. They took care of Bethany as well, I believe was who it was. And so they're starting to take care of those teams. Really outside of the hiccup of McPherson, this team has had a very good season, and I think of reaching that higher level of expectations that we talked about in our first episode with what we expected from this team to possibly do. And really, if you just take out that one blemish that was at the start of the year, it's been a really good year, and they have some of their toughest tests ahead, but I think it's definitely been a positive year for Brad Griffin, and this could be the turning point of this program, finding something consistent moving forward.
Yeah, and Jake, like you said, difficult schedule ahead. 2 of the next 3 games will be teams ranked in the top 25 in the nation. Ottawa's at number 22, they're at number 22 currently, and then K-Dub is at number 7. K-Dub, of course, in 3 weeks from now can definitely move up or down from where they're at, but they are currently at number 7. But, yeah, Jake, I think, like you said, building this program forward from where they're at now, they used to be in our memory of Southwestern, it's not been pretty. It's been really ugly football. But back in the 80s, dude, they were a powerhouse team year in and year out.
Yeah, and I think it's all about just trying to kind of return to that. I mean, we've seen, when I was there for a game, I think it was the Sterling game. I had to think back to it. And I mean, the crowd was the most full I've seen it in my entire time of watching SC football games. And you can tell there's excitement around the program. You see it on Twitter. You see it whenever you're watching the games online. And I think they have a big chance now to start getting better recruits, and then that's how you slowly build up. That's what K-Dub was terrible whenever I first came to Southwestern. They got a new young head coach. They had a down year, and then they had a year where you could tell they were kind of starting to turn it around, and now they're top 10 in the nation. And this Kansas Wesleyan team, I've seen them play once this year where it was on one of the ESPN games, and I kind of checked it out, and They look legit. This is a KCAC school who legitimately has a chance to go deep. And then same for Ottawa. Ottawa's looked really good this year. It definitely has looked like at the top of the KCAC, it's a little bit of an up year for them. It seems like there's more talent. And that's a good sign for Southwestern because they've been able to do well to this point, and now they're going to have a chance. And if you can take down Ottawa or Kansas Wesleyan, I think that would just be absolutely huge. I think the chances of winning both of those are fairly low, especially with how good I think Kansas Wesleyan is. But I think their goal should be to win 2 of these last 3, taking down what would be Ottawa and St. Mary, in my opinion, which could get them ranked. It realistically could get them ranked.
Yeah, if they go into Ottawa, beat Ottawa, and then they win versus St. Mary, that K-Dub Southwestern game could be against 2 ranked teams in the nation. Southwestern wins those 2 games handedly, and then honestly, just beating Ottawa would be a very good kind of push to get into the top 25, and I could see Southwestern being at that 25-24 spot when they go into K-Dub.
And who knows, maybe Kansas Wesleyan drops 1 game, and then that game against Kansas Wesleyan's for the KCAC championship. I mean, you never know. Unfortunately, if you do somehow end up beating Kansas Wesleyan, if you're Southwestern, and that's their only loss at the end of the season, you're going to be absolutely kicking yourself over that McPherson game.
For the McPherson game.
Because McPherson is a team they should
right.
beat every time, 10 out of 10 times.
Yes. Well, regardless if Southwestern's good or bad, they should beat McPherson.
And they actually have beat McPherson in some of these years where they've been bad. That's been like one of those few wins they've been able to find.
Right. And so, but yeah, Jake, kind of what I was mentioned earlier is that historically this Southwestern program is really good. I mean, there was a time where they were in the playoffs for 10, 20 straight years, maybe not that much, but you get the point. Like, they were in the hunt every single year to be in that playoff spot and winning the KCAC, multiple KCAC championships. In fact, if you go and look at the history of the program, almost against every KCAC team that they've played that's been in the conference as long as they have a winning record against. Now, recent years, not so much, but you look back at Friends. I mean, Southwestern owns that rivalry. It's kind of like Texas OU, Texas A&M. Like, historically, this program has just dominated its opponents, and it's good to see them back on top.
Yeah, and they've already had a win against a team who's receiving votes in Avila this year, so it's a chance to build on to a resume that could look pretty good at the end of the year, and maybe not a playoff resume, but I think it really for Southwestern, if you win out, we've seen two lost teams get at-large bids into the playoffs in football out of the KCAC. So I think there's a legitimate chance that in their minds it should be win out, and we give ourselves a pretty damn good chance to get into the playoffs. But that's going to be a lot easier done than said.
Yeah, right.
Especially with Kansas Wesleyan, who's a juggernaut right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the Ottawa game, Ottawa always plays – well, actually, it's kind of been the opposite. Ottawa's kind of always been a very good team, or at the very least, they've been kind of a middle-of-the-road team in the KCAC, and Southwestern's always kind of played up to them, and they've always played Ottawa well, at least in my opinion, in my experience there. They've always kind of played up to that game, and so I'm expecting this one to be a very, very good game, very hard-fought game for both teams. And I like Southwestern. Yeah, very physical. Ottawa's defense is always physical. I mean, it's always been a battle of defenses. And speaking of defense, Southwestern caused 4 fumbles and for a total of 40 yards. They forced 4 fumbles. They recovered 4 fumbles. So that's actually extremely, that defense, given the offense, as high-powered as the offense is, those extra possessions could pay dividends going forward against a team like Ottawa.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be fun. We're to this kind of stretch of the schedule where we're really going to see how legit this team is. I definitely think they've earned the right to be considered a good team in the KCAC, but now can they be a good team more on a national level? is what we're going to see in these last few games.
Yeah, and I never thought I'd say that. And speaking of national level, Jake, let's get to the NCAA. That was talking SC football. Let's go to our college and NFL takeaways. And I kind of want to start off with my college takeaway, if that's all right with you, Jake. It's kind of a more serious story, and it's a really heartwarming feeling, and it's exactly why sports is so important in not only this country but in the world. And Tyler Trent, if you're not aware of the story, he's a cancer patient. He has bone cancer, and so he's very weak. He's very kind of at the later stages of the cancer treatments, and it's like stage 5. It's terminal. He's not going to recover from it, and he's kind of at the end of his days. Well, he was named an honorary captain to the Purdue Boilermakers. Big-time Purdue fan, is a student there, and he was able to go to the game in his wheelchair and watch the game and go onto the field, and do the coin toss and all that stuff. And Purdue, with the biggest upset of the season to this point, beating number 2 Ohio State at home, it's an incredible story. And he called it. Reporters were asking him before the game, what do you think? And he said Purdue's going to blow them out, and Purdue freaking blew them. I mean, they won by 3 scores or something like that. It was incredible, and it kind of explains why sports is so important to people, because it gives them something to look forward to, and it escapes sometimes the harsh reality of life sometimes, and you can escape in football or any type of sport that you want to go into. And it's a really heartwarming feeling and a good story, and that was my biggest college takeaway.
Yeah, between that and the video on Twitter with the young kid who plays football getting the Shaquem Griffin jersey, who has one hand, and that's like his role model. Those are the type of stories that almost make you tear up when you read them or watch the video, because it kind of reminds you, and I think it's a good almost grounding when you get caught up in the hatred so much, like I'm about to in sports. It grounds you back to what is really great about sports, the roots of sports that makes it so great, not so much all the Twitter hate and all that is so prevalent in today's world. Right,
and it also just kind of shows you that, sports is more, it should be an escape more so than, what everybody makes it out. Like, it's not life or death. Cancer is life or death. You know what I mean? And so it's like, enjoy sports for what it is, and maybe not take it as seriously as we do on a daily basis. And I know I'm as guilty as anybody else out there. I mean, if not more so. So, I mean, there's definitely more important things out there than sports, but sports should always be a good getaway and more of a safe haven for people, if you will, than, what people try to make it out as.
Right. I think people who do that are ridiculous. Now let's talk shit on the Texas A&M Aggies.
Fuck the Aggies.
Let's do this. I would personally never, take sports out of context and be a ridiculous fan, we see on Twitter.
Fucking ridiculous.
But you know what? It's time to talk shit on the Aggies. And let's be clear here to start. I've tried to stay away from the little brother because I don't really give a shit about them. They went to the SEC. I was like, great. We lost a consistent win every year. That was the only way I looked at it. It was like, that's one guaranteed win off the schedule. And
that's like a KU.
Yeah, well, not even. I mean, at least KU's actually upset us in the last few years. But,
wow.
So I've seen a lot of uproar because, A&M fans are getting upset because Daddy's back in the top 10. And they're getting very upset, saying that A&M should be ranked above Texas. 2-loss A&M should be ranked above 1-loss Texas because Texas lost to Maryland in the first game of the year, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree that Texas has been a different team since then, and saying that the teams Texas beat hasn't been that good, but OU is their only decent win, and they should have lost that game anyways, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. And actually, if you look at the USC win, USC has not lost since the Texas game, and they have actually looked fairly decent, better than people have been saying. And if you look at TCU, we've talked about that Ohio State game, and I don't think TCU's
they're falling
team.
apart now.
Well, they
TCU,
lost to OU.
Their running back got arrested.
They always have the discipline problems, but still. So let's go into A&M now. Since they're bragging so much because they love their fucking conference, let's look at who they beat. Northwestern State at home. Oh, spicy ass win right there.
Lost to Sam Houston.
University of Louisiana Monroe. What? All right, okay, but let's get into SEC play because that's the greatest conference in all of sports, counting professional, right? They beat Arkansas. Arkansas got blasted at home by North Texas. They beat Arkansas by 1 touchdown, and they had to come back to do that, and it was an ugly game. They beat Kentucky at home. Kentucky just won a game in the SEC passing less than 10 yards in the game. Kentucky might have the worst offense in the history of college football. All right, so they won that game, and by the way, that was in Aggieville or whatever the hell they call that terrible place called College Station. And then they beat South Carolina by 3 points. These are all, I just listed all their wins. South Carolina has been very bad. The only good team South Carolina's played, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, is Georgia, and they got blasted in that game. I mean, seriously, South Carolina sucks big old Gamecock. And they only won that game by 3. So who have they played other than Alabama and Clemson? And congratulations, Aggies. You lost to Alabama by like 24. Plant that moral flag victory in the middle of the field because that's all you're good at. And then your great moral victory against Clemson.
Yeah. The only reason why they're ranked is the Clemson game, basically.
Essentially, because they lost by like 2, and then they got blasted by Alabama. But there are literally Aggie fans on Twitter, and I can't make this up, who are like, oh, did you know that the Aggies have played Alabama the closest? It's like, yeah, because Alabama has only played D3 teams other than them. They're only D2. Congrats. And then,
dude, Alabama's had a very bad schedule.
If you look at the rest of the schedule for A&M, all they have is LSU. Mississippi State's trash. Auburn's trash. They play like Mid-Tennessee State or some trash-ass school in between.
Dude, didn't Tennessee beat Auburn?
I know Auburn's not even ranked anymore.
I honestly think Tennessee beat Auburn. I could be wrong. I could be really wrong here, but I'm pretty sure I saw that. I may have flip-flopped the scores around or whatever. You know what? Keep talking.
Yeah, back to my rant because I still got a little bit more left. So
I'm gonna look it up.
A&M, they talk about their storied and how storied their program is and how they're such a major program. Hey, Tanner, did you know that the last time they won a national championship, fucking Hitler was still alive?
Oh, my God.
It was 1939.
Hey, Hitler.
Yeah. Let's take that into perspective. The last time A&M was on top of the nation in football, Hitler was alive. Jesus.
The biggest racist in the history of the world.
A&M actually went from being the whipping boy of the Big 12 to the whipping boy of the SEC. The only reason the SEC allowed A&M to come in is because they knew A&M would be their bitch and give them a pipeline to recruit in the state of Texas. A&M doesn't even have cheerleaders. They have yell leaders who have a tradition of punching themselves in the nutsacks whenever they score a touchdown or something like that. If you haven't seen that, look it up. I'm being dead serious. And their fucking mascot is a border collie. A Longhorn takes bigger shits than a border collie. Oh, and finally,
they did lose to Tennessee. They lost to Tennessee.
Yeah, and Tennessee's dog shit. And to finish off this little rant, it's 76-37-5 is the quote unquote rivalry. Really, I just call it the head-to-head matchup. Oh, and the largest victory in the series was a 48-0 Texas win. The longest win streak in the series was Texas for 10 straight years. And Texas won the last meeting. Now stay the SEC's bitch and don't talk about daddy anymore and just stay quiet in your little corner. Good night, Aggie fans.
Oh, man. All right. Well,
so
Jeb
many
Newhouse,
facts.
I know, has officially turned off this podcast.
Well, Jeb, sorry that I threw so many facts at you. I know Aggies can't really handle those very well because they like to think of themselves as a power team.
No, they're
are
right.
Power bottom. That's about the only thing they're power of.
Something I've always said about, SEC fans or whatever. If you root for your conference to do well, like if you're rooting just like straight up for your conference, that means you're in a losing program because your team's not in it anymore. And
that's just chanted how SEC after coming back to barely beat Duke in a fucking bowl game.
Yeah. And my thing is like, and Duke's a basketball team. They're a basketball
I forgot
school,
they had a football program.
Yeah, well, I mean, it hasn't been really relevant. And so my thing is like, if you root for your conference religiously and you constantly chant it, that means you're a losing program. And that means pretty much every team in the SEC is a losing program with the exception of Alabama. LSU's in there every now and then. Florida hasn't been relevant since Tim Tebow. And
Georgia's
LSU's
hit
really
and miss.
and Georgia's hit or miss. Yeah, you're right about Georgia. And that's really only been like the last like 2 or 3 years since they got Kirby Smart. And Mark Richt was like guaranteed a loss or two like every single year. You couldn't take any Georgia team seriously whenever he was in charge. But that's just my thing. It's like I've never been like Big 12, go OU when they're in the playoffs. No, that just means my team didn't make the playoffs. Fuck that. I'm not rooting for that to happen. No, my thing is if Texas controls their own destiny and they win the Big 12, they're in the playoffs. We don't have to worry about an at-large bid or whatever the fuck A&M has to worry about. So
yeah,
that's my thing. That's my take on it.
It doesn't matter. A&M will get another big moral victory against LSU. So congratulations ahead of time, Aggie fans. That'll be the big story of your season, your big moral victories.
Against LSU, Alabama, and Clemson. So
and then maybe Jake, maybe win a bowl game, you can chant SEC. I feel much better now. That felt really good because I was sick of seeing them on Twitter. Like, why do you care so much about your daddy?
Yeah, they really do talk a lot of shit on Texas, and it's even in their fight song whenever we're not even in the same conference anymore. So whatever. But anyway, I'm going to go to my NFL takeaway, Jake, and my NFL takeaway is not really any play on the field, but it's the trades before the trade deadline. I mean, there's still like 5 or 6 days before the trade deadline actually hits. And there's been some pretty big trades. Of course, the Amari Cooper trade, we've talked about that. We're going to go into further detail about that later on. Eli got traded, Eli Apple, that is, to the New Orleans Saints. And Snacks Harrison was traded earlier today. And we were recording this on Wednesday, so it was like Wednesday morning he got traded. And then Carlos Hyde traded a week ago to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that just kind of shows how desperate the Jaguars are getting if they're trading for Carlos Hyde. That means Fournette, he may not be coming back this year.
Yeah, I think I don't know do you remember what his injury is?
It started off as a hamstring.
Yeah,
it started that way. I don't know where it's at now.
It must be like a severe, like he actually like tore something. Because if they're making that trade, either they're really trying to win these next few weeks so they can be relevant when he comes back, or he's done for the foreseeable future this season. Yeah,
and so, and like I said, Snacks Harrison trade, that's a big one. And I think, and we're going to also get into this a little bit more later on. I mean, this is just kind of my takeaway. We will go in more depth with this trade, but that's kind of just him and Eli Apple leaving New York is kind of the Giants just saying, all right, you know what? I think y'all are all finally right. The media, the fans, Twitter, I think we're going to actually give y'all some credit. You know what? We're going to finally admit it. We suck. We're not good, and we're going to start rebuilding, and we're getting rid of all of our players that we think are holding us back or our money issues, a salary pit, whatever you want to call it. We're getting rid of them. We're starting from the ground up. We've got new GMs. We've got new coaches. We're starting with their players, and we're cleaning house. And I think they're finally starting to admit that, and it's been like – they should have started this process probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, the Eli Apple one kind of surprised me because he was
young,
first-round pick, and he's only in like his third year. That one was pretty surprising to me that they let him go. But I think if you're a Giants fan, I would be pretty happy that they're just finally declaring themselves dead because they, we talked a lot of shit on the Cowboys and stuff this year, but at least we're not the Giants fan because they are actually terrible.
Trying to win.
I mean,
they're trying. With the beginning of the season, Jake, what makes it so much worse is that at the beginning of the season, they were trying to win. Like, they thought they had a legit shot with Saquon, Eli, and Beckham Jr., and then their defense that they have. They thought they had a legitimate shot of making playoffs and Super Bowl, and they still suck this bad. So that's even worse. Now they're admitting it. They're like, all right, well, let's get rid of everybody so it doesn't look like this season's a complete loss. Let's get something out of it.
Yeah, and I think their fans are upset because this was a good quarterback draft class, and next year's draft class is not very good at quarterback. The best possible quarterback might not even declare the Oregon QB. So
Justin Herbert.
Yeah. And to me, he is by far the best pro prospect at quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't believe in a lot of the other
drafts.
guys.
Right, I've seen early mock drafts, and he's probably in the top 3 in every single one of them. So, and that's just, early mock drafts don't really do anything. Like, what it's, I don't know, but it's really not even relevant at this point. But he is up there on almost all of them. So
yeah, and I don't know how, like the West Virginia quarterback Greer, he's considered one of the best prospects in this next draft, maybe the next best prospect, and I don't really know how I feel about him in the NFL. So I think this next QB draft is pretty weak. Actually, this next really offensive draft is pretty weak, but we'll get into that.
It's going to be very, very defensive.
Yeah, we'll get into that later as well. And so I'll go ahead and go on to my NFL takeaway. But in our first episode, I picked, and what almost looked laughable after the first few weeks of the season was when I picked the Los Angeles Chargers to go to the Super Bowl. Well, very quietly, in a conference that I've been making fun of, a team out of Los Angeles in the AFC is emerging as a very possible contender to the Patriots and the Chiefs because of the fact that they actually somewhat have a defense that's starting to get healthy and actually play on the defensive side of the football and not just kind of give up touchdowns.
I thought we picked the same Super Bowl. I thought we picked the same Super Bowl with Jacksonville and Minnesota, and we both picked Minnesota.
No, we both picked Minnesota to win it, but I had Minnesota against the Chargers. I did not have the Jaguars in there.
Okay.
We can go back and check the tape, but
hey, we have the tape. Trust me, I
yes.
still have the tape.
I would
be
fairly disappointed if it wasn't the Chargers, but I know it wasn't the Jaguars. But
okay, I will go back and I will check for you.
Yes. So, but assuming I did pick Chargers, they are they're starting to look like a team who could very possibly contend. They definitely have the talent to do so, and they're definitely, instead of getting it on track midway through the season, they're actually turning it around at the right time. They've won 4 in a row. Normally they wait until they're about 1-7 to actually make a push. So the fact they did it this year after being, 1-2, is a pretty good sign for them.
No, yeah, Jake, I do think the Chargers are coming on strong, and I had them. I know I had them winning their division. I know that much. So, I mean, I had them in the playoffs, if that means anything, which I don't really think it does. But anyway, I did have the Jaguars, so my take is kind of screwed, it looks like. So, and then I don't think anyone's going to beat the Rams. I would not be at all surprised if they went undefeated going into the postseason. I really wouldn't. I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl and go undefeated, but I really would not be surprised at all if we saw 16-0. I really wouldn't.
I do think if the Vikings are playing well, if they hit their stride at the right time, they could compete with the Rams. Because we saw him compete.
Cousins is so inconsistent. He's
exactly.
So
if he hits up at the right time, his upside is freakish. And
it's Joe Flacco playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the Vikings hit their stride at the right time, and I also think the Saints are still a pretty good team. And we'll see. The Rams still have some big tests. They still have the Chiefs left on their schedule, so we'll see how their season ends up. But I definitely agree with you. I mean, as of right now, the NFL needs to catch up to the Rams. But I do think there is the possibility of that because I do think we've seen a bunch of teams starting to step up as we start getting closer to this midpoint of the season.
Well, yeah, teams are starting to look like who we thought they were. Like the Miami, they are who we thought they were. You know, who's another team that we thought the Patriots, they are who we thought they were. I mean,
kinda. Their defense still really sucks.
Really sucks.
Really sucks.
Chicago should have beat them. I mean, they caught that Hail Mary at the end, but they didn't get in. Well, Jake, let's go. That is our takeaways. Yeah, we're done. We wrapped it all up. Great. Let's go to our favorite running backs. Jake, I'll let you start off. Go ahead with your favorite running back. Again, disclaimer for everybody. This is not who we think are the 5 best running backs of all time, because obviously we would all agree it'd be Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith. It'd be guys like that, and we're not going to do the same list. We're going to pick the same guys, so we're going to go with our favorite running backs, just our personal favorites. And Jake, I'm going to let you start off.
Yeah, which also means, primarily guys we saw play for the most part. Or at least have seen highlights and tape from and stuff like that. But my 5 is actually kind of a curveball. It's Marion Barber, and really,
I thought about putting.
It's like a 3 or 4 year section of it. So I do want to make that clear because he definitely wasn't always great, but he had 3 or 4 years where he was just so much fun to watch. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons I put him in here was the play that you and I were both at that Sunday night game for the Cowboys against the Giants, where he
His second best highlight play of his career.
Yeah, he karaoke down the sideline for a touchdown. It's one of the most amazing plays I've ever seen live, if not the most amazing play I've seen live. And when he was at the top of his game, he was really fun to watch for the Cowboys. And he always kind of set the tone for the game. He was a very physical runner, and that's kind of why he deteriorated so fast, was how he ran the ball. But that was kind of my curveball, throwing him in there at 5.
No, yeah, and Jake, I'm totally with you. Barber was a really fun player to watch.
I didn't know if you would completely disagree with me and call me an idiot or like it.
Well, it's your favorite. You can't really disagree with someone if it's their favorite. You know, I don't know. It's not really a debatable. These aren't debatable lists in my opinion. These are just like fun lists that we can put together and throw in there who we really enjoyed watching play or watch their highlights or whatever, you know. So I'm going to go ahead with my 5th favorite running back, and I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. And it's been a very short career for him, but he is fun to watch, man. I mean, he does it all. He blocks extremely well. So I'll get hyped for a block. I really will. Like when he blocks somebody, I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, Zeke, you fucked him up, you know. And then the game against the Lions where he is 40 yards down the field and makes an amazing Willie Mays style catch to basically win the game for the Cowboys. I mean, he's a great receiving back. He's great blocking, and he's probably not one of the best, but he is top 3 running back right now in the league. Probably number 2 right behind Todd Gurley at pure running back position. I mean, he is an awesome running back. He's fun to watch. He's given me a lot of hope for this team just future-wise. Like as long as we have Zeke back there, we have a good chance to win the game. I mean, it's kind of like an Adrian Peterson when he was in his prime with the Vikings, just kind of a shitty kind of team around him, but you have to tune in just to see what he's going to do.
Yeah, no, and he's my 4, and it's for all the reasons you just said, so I'm not even going to elaborate on that.
All right, great. So I'll go my 4, and it's Earl Campbell, a former Texas Longhorn great, Houston Oiler great, Earl Campbell. All you have to do is watch the highlight of him running over the guy and the guy basically tearing his entire jersey off, and he's just running with his shoulder pads down the field. That's like the best highlight video of any type of football play by a running back I've ever seen. I mean, this guy was ginormous. And I have kind of a cool story from my mom is that whenever she was at Louisiana Tech in college, he would come kind of in the off season. You know, he's in Houston, and like there was one game I think they had. They were on a bye week, and he was just kind of training. And Karl Malone was actually at Louisiana Tech at the same time. Him and Karl Malone were in the training room together when my mom walked in, and Earl Campbell was just hanging out with Karl Malone, and they were both talking and getting taped up. And she said his thighs were like the size of Karl Malone's like chest, and Karl Malone's like 7 foot, like the guy's fucking huge. And so the size, she said she was astounded by how big Earl Campbell's thighs were. Yeah, well, yeah, I saw that one coming. But no, Earl Campbell, he's extremely, just all you have to do is watch his highlights and you can understand, yeah, okay, this guy was a monster.
Yeah, and so my 3 is also another UT great, Jamal Charles. I mean, for a year, he was probably the best running back in college football for that year. And then, his pro career, even though he fell off pretty quickly because of injuries.
Yeah, he tapered off pretty quickly.
He was unbelievable to watch when he was healthy and in his prime in the NFL. And so, just from getting to watch him as a Longhorn fan, and then I've always kind of respected and enjoyed watching the Chiefs play. I really like Arrowhead. So getting to watch him play, and they're in the AFC, so I don't really worry about him too much as a Cowboys fan. Right. So I've always kind of liked the Chiefs. And so getting to watch his career there was always really fun, and definitely was going to be in my top 5.
Yeah, he's got a great story too, Jake. I mean, him being in the Special Olympics when he was a kid and stuff like that, or younger, and him,
hard not
being
to
as
like
good
him.
of an athlete. It is, and so I'm right there with you, Jake. Jamal Charles was one of my favorite all-time Longhorns as well. I'm going to actually go another route, just because this guy. You can't think of like mid-2000s running backs without thinking of Adrian Peterson. Him at OU, I literally thought anytime Texas played OU while he was on the field with OU, he could single-handedly win the game for OU on offense and on defense. I know he didn't play defense, but he was that good at OU, when healthy. And then he goes to Minnesota and he rips off like 200-yard games in his first like 2 seasons or something like that. And then he comes he gets the all-time single game rushing record against the Bears. Watched that game live, by the way. It was awesome. I wasn't there, of course, but I watched it, and I was just blown away. And then, him coming like 4 yards short after tearing his ACL the season prior. He comes like 4 yards short of the all-time single-season rushing record that was Eric Dickerson's record, and he was like 4 yards short and coming off of an ACL. Unbelievable. He's a monster and just unreal, and he kind of killed the Cowboys this last week, and he's like 50 years old. So, kudos to Adrian Peterson. He's always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, he would probably be – he would definitely be in my honorable mention. And even depending on the day, could make my top 5. My number 2 is going to be number 2, right? I just got lost.
Yes. Yeah, you did Jamal Charles.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. My number 2 is LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, a guy who played at TCU, Texas guy. I remember in Madden, growing up playing Madden, LaDainian Tomlinson was always one of my favorite guys to play as because I always kind of liked TCU back then. They weren't in the Big 12 yet. They were always kind of the underdog, not power conference team who was always doing really good and high in the country rankings. And I always just loved LaDainian Tomlinson because cool. They're horny toads. Kind of funny story behind that. When I was a kid. It was like third grade. We had to pick our favorite animals, and I said a horny toad, and the teacher sent me to the office, and I didn't know. I was like as innocent as could be, and I got sent to the office, and I was just like, I don't get it. And some of the kids laughed, but of course not everyone did. But the teacher just assumed I was being a smartass, which I can't blame her. But I was actually just innocent. But yeah,
it's better than being a dumb one.
Playing as LT, I mean, that's just the running back I remember from when I was little, being like, "Wow, this guy's amazing." And so, because the Cowboys were always bad back then, they didn't have any good running backs. And so LT was the guy I always loved to watch and play with on Madden and like NFL Blitz. I'd always place the Chargers so I could play with LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah, well, I'm also number 2, LaDainian Tomlinson with me as well, Jake. I mean, growing up as a kid, if you're our age, like mid-20s to early 20s, and your favorite running back wasn't LaDainian Tomlinson, then you just didn't know what good football was because he had the stiff arm, he had jukes, he could power you over, he could outrun you. He kind of was a do-it-all back, and he was kind of the first one.
And he was huge.
Yeah, and he was one of those guys that he was kind of one of the first running backs that was a really good receiver as well. Like, it kind of formed what you see today with, like, Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, David Johnson. Like, you see these prime running backs being able to catch the ball. It started with LaDainian Tomlinson. I had the powder blue jersey. I had a powder blue LaDainian Tomlinson jersey I got for Christmas one year whenever I was a kid. Loved it, wore it all the time. And then, I mean, I can't not talk about his visor. Did he not have the coolest fucking helmet of all time?
Oh, yeah, he was years ahead of his time.
Yeah, I mean, just super cool looking guy. He was extremely athletic, do it all back. But yeah, LaDainian Tomlinson was my number 2.
Yep, and then I'll let you go with I'll let you do your number 1 first since I got to do my 2 first.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense,
considering
we have the same number 1. It's Emmitt Smith for both of us. I'll let Jake go on his spiel, but Emmitt Smith was really, he was one of my dad's favorite players whenever I was a kid growing up. It's kind of what made me a Cowboys fan, was watching Emmitt kind of at the end of his career. I still remember one of my first game memories of like watching NFL football was Emmitt Smith running for the all-time rushing record in that game against Seattle. That was kind of one of my first memories that I remember, that stuck with me of impactful moments. And ever since that, I mean, if you're a Cowboy fan and you make an all-time favorites running back list and Emmitt Smith isn't number 1, then you're not really a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I mean, me and Tanner are a month apart, so we come from a very similar background when it comes to sports. So that's why our lists are sometimes going to look the same, especially at the top, and especially in this case because that's both, one of those major sports moments that we remember first when we think about growing up and huge sports moments that kind of impacted our love for sports.
Yeah, and then, growing up, being a Cowboys fan, we're going to have some similar players. I do have an honorable mention, Jake. Mike Allscott, the fullback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, that dude was a beast. I always would play with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I would pull a PFT from Pardon My Take, and I would just do a fullback dive up the middle for like 5 yards each carry, and I'd get a first down every single time in like 3 plays, and I would just march down the field with Mike Allscott. I mean, he was extremely fun to watch too. I mean, he would carve some holes up, and he was probably the best fullback of our generation.
Yeah, and of course, I already kind of mentioned my Adrian Peterson would be the obvious first choice for an honorable mention for me, and really could
there's a lot of
go in my top 5. There's so many good running backs is a hard one to do because
there's really fun ones. Yeah, there's so many fun ones, too. You got Ricky Williams in there. You got Clinton Portis, who would always dress up for his interviews, and not like the gay, like Cam Newton dressing up, but like he would literally wear like costumes, like Halloween costumes to interviews. And he was just a Redskin, so I didn't put him on my list. And that was basically the only reason why I didn't put Clinton Portis on my list. But there's some really, like Jerome Bettis, he's a Steeler.
Holmes.
I didn't put him on my list.
Another
Priest
UT
Holmes,
guy.
yes. Yeah, there's just some really fun running backs of us kind of growing up. We grew up in a really good age of running backs, Jake.
Yeah, we did, which ironically enough now it's really down to where there's like 1 or 2, especially with Bell pretty much out of the league. Really,
for now, yeah.
Really only 1 or 2 running backs right now that are really good in what would be like Gurley. I put Kareem Hunt up there. So, what, 3?
I put Kareem Hunt. I think Alvin Kamara is coming along. I'm still not completely sold on him because he's not as consistent.
To me, he's more of a
gadget.
I don't want to say a gadget because he can run well the backfield, but he is more of a – I guess I'm kind of old school now when it comes to running backs. He's more of a new school type running back and what the future of the position is. And it is fun to watch him, but I wouldn't throw him up there in that elite running back level. He's more of just an elite player to me. And not that makes any sense, but in my head it does.
But yeah, no, I see what you're going for there. I really do. I see what you're trying to get
I don't
at,
want to just trash on him because I do think he's really good, but to me he's less of a running back and more of a hybrid type position.
I mean, and the more we talk about running backs, the more names that pop up, like Edgerrin James Brian Westbrook. Like, there's just guys that, you just kind of forget about as their careers kind of fade away. Curtis Martin. And then you just kind of remember them. You're like, man, there are some damn good running backs,
Yeah, no, a ton. We could probably do a top 20 easily.
Yeah, we really could. And like I said, like mid-2000s, early 90s running backs, man, we had a plethora of them. We were at no shortage of them for sure. Well, Jake, we do need to move on.
Yes.
So let's get to some talking points. You want to start off with basketball or football? You have a little bit of hockey in there as well. You want to start off with hockey?
Yeah, we'll start out with the hockey. So I went to a Stars game this past week on Friday, and it was OU college night there. So basically they just do like college nights for like, they do like A&M, UT, TCU, all the kind of the southern hemisphere, like Texas, and then OU creeped in there, colleges. And so they brought them up. They basically bring it up on the Jumbotron. Or like, oh, it's OU college night. And then the whole crowd just started booing. It was
that's awesome.
It was the best part of the game because the Stars lost the game. And it was the best. I mean, it was just hilarious. And then the lady on the prompter, I think, caught on to it and then said "hook 'em" at the end. It was just
oh no way.
It was an amazing moment. It was so funny.
That is awesome.
Just hearing the whole crowd. It was a loud boo. I mean, you would have thought the other team
sucks.
Yeah.
OU sucks.
It was fantastic, and especially since UT, beat OU this year, it just made it that much better because you couldn't have an OU fan, with his teeth cut out because of the meth and being inbred, try to talk crap to you about them beating you.
Yeah,
I hate the state of Oklahoma, cool. By the way. I'll go on a rant about that someday. That'll be fun.
Just the state of Oklahoma.
Just the state, not even
horrible.
OU.
You and I
have more respect for OU than I do the state.
No, well, you and I, we've had to drive through it going to Kansas so many times. We've had to drive through it so many times.
I'll just put it this way. You see more suicide prevention hotlines and meth hotlines than you do in the rest of the country combined.
No, you do. You do. I mean, it's nearly every other billboard is like a suicide prevention hotline.
And I think about calling it sometimes when I'm driving through it.
guys, just get me off I-35 for the love of God. All right, well, yeah, Jake, let's go a little bit of basketball here. You know what? Let's start with the Lakers, since we're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and trash them, and I know you want to trash them too because we're LeBron haters, and we're going to stand by that, and we're going to continue with that for the rest of the season and the rest of our lives. Lakers, horrible start, 0-3, first time in LeBron's career.
On pace for 0-82.
On pace for 0-82. And Jake, you can attest to this. I gave and it's still early on, so it will probably still not come true, but I gave a hot take, a very hot take. As soon as LeBron signed, I told you that the Lakers were not going to make the playoffs with this team that they surrounded LeBron with. And
I can confirm.
Saying that. I'm not really saying that because of LeBron. I'm really not. I'm saying it more so because of Rondo, Lance Stevenson, McGee, and this fucking horrible train wreck that we've already seen with the Houston game. We've already seen this drama surrounding them, and it's only going to get worse. I could see this being a dismantlement like the Cavaliers team last year right before the trade deadline, where they just get rid of everybody and was like, well, that experiment failed.
And the problem is they're not in the East to save them. It's a lot tougher, and it shows the Spurs. I mean, obviously, I'm a Spurs fan, so it made me very, very happy to watch, to get to see the end of that game where LeBron has a chance to ice the game. They're up by 1. He's at the free throw line, and he misses not one, but both free throws. And then Patty Mills goes down, hits a 2-point bucket mid-range jumper to go up by to go up in the game, and then LeBron misses the game winner. And it just made me happy to see him choke that game. One thing with the NBA, I haven't been able to watch enough because I won't really watch until the playoffs. And the only way I'll watch the playoffs is if I actually think someone can beat Golden State. But this has been, you know what the average amount of points per game is for one team right now in the NBA?
Like 140.
It's
like 140.
The average point in the NBA for like point total for a team is 114 right now.
That's ridiculous.
And I know offenses have gotten better and they shoot more threes and they play faster, but don't tell me that. I mean, they loaf. They really do. They loaf on defense. They don't play hard defense in today's NBA anymore.
It's like every game is like watching an all-star
And that's
game,
why I like
basically.
hockey so much, because you can't loaf in hockey. You literally cannot, because you will get flat out embarrassed.
Yeah, well, and I also think with the Lakers thing, man, I'm just so over the hype, and I mean, all you've seen this. It's like there's no other teams, and it's like Golden State doesn't even exist. It's literally just the Lakers now, and it's only because of LeBron. I just get so annoyed with it, and I know LeBron has nothing. I know LeBron actually has nothing to do with like the media hype that he gets, although he does. I think he calls a lot of attention to himself. I really do, but. Sheesh, but I mean, it's just one of those things where it's horrible. And I had something else to say on top of that. Maybe it'll come back to me, but I can't really think about what I was going to say. I was going to, but you went on your little hockey rant for a little bit. But anyway, Mavericks. I watched a little bit of Mavericks this week, and Jake. Just because I wanted to see. I mean, I'm a Mavericks fan. Jake's a Spurs fan, so we will go at it a little bit. We have some different takes and stuff, but. I wanted to see what my boy Luka Doncic, who I was very skeptical about because he chose number 77. You can't be a star in the league with that number. So
still got to change that.
But Jake, he's a real deal, man. I mean, this kid is. My biggest thing with a rookie is how comfortable they look in the league. I mean, he has full command of this team whenever he's out there on the floor, and he is comfortable. He's out there. He's got chemistry already. He can distribute. He can dribble. He looks very clumsy. He's white. He's slow. But damn, I mean, the guy can ball. He's legit. He's legit.
I don't understand how the Mavericks do this, and I want you to give me an explanation, but Dirk Nowitzki is obviously the cornerstone of that. And I think one thing me and you can both agree on is we have both rooted for each other's teams when they've been in the finals. You have a respect for the Spurs. I have a respect for the Mavericks. I love Dirk Nowitzki. I'm not one of those crazy fans when it comes to NBA basketball. But how do the Mavericks go from Dirk, who's one of the greatest NBA players of all time? He would be in my top 5 favorite players of all time list. How do they go from Dirk, who is arguably one of the greatest players of all time, but arguably one of the most klutzy-looking players of all time, to Luka, to now what looks like could be the new cornerstone of their franchise? a big, klutzy white guy who not only is big and klutzy, but this time they outdid themselves. He takes the ball up the court, and he actually does a good job of it somehow. I still don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to me because he's slow and he's klutzy and he doesn't look athletic, but yet it works. And the Mavericks are the only team who does this. I don't understand it.
You know what? I actually do have an explanation for this, Jake. So what they
Mark
do
Cuban's
is
a
that
racist. No?
So it has to be from another country. They have to go overseas. Okay, so that's where it starts off. And they actually breed them. They actually have Dirk Nowitzki just inseminating a bunch of just German women and Slovakian women. And it just kind of, he has a seed all over the European countries. And we have our eye on all those kids as they're coming up.
They took Nick Saban's technology.
Well, of course, you see Luka Doncic. He's only like 19 years old. Guess how long Dirk Nowitzki's been in the league, Jake? The math adds up. He's going into his 21st season. So after about 2 years with the Mavericks, we were like, oh, shit, this actually could work. So we sent him overseas over the offseason. He just planted his seed everywhere. Luka Doncic was the first kind of seed coming up. So now we're going to have about 5 or 6 other ones coming up in the upcoming draft, and we're just going to have a full team of tall, klutzy white guys that are really good at basketball.
Dennis Smith Jr. is going to look like the outlier.
Yeah. Well, instead of having the token white guy that shoots three, you're going to have the token black guy that can dunk.
That's great. No, I like that theory. I mean, Illuminati's real.
Hey, it's the Mark Cuban effect. I mean, he's a Shark Tank. I mean, he's a tank, man. What can we say? All right, Jake, let's go a little bit on the football side of things. We talked a little bit of basketball, a little bit of hockey. Let's go football again. I want to go with the Giants finally admitting that they suck. We kind of already talked about it a little bit more in depth with it. If I'm a Giants fan, Jake, then I'm actually really okay with all the stuff that they've done in the past like week and a half. This last like week, getting rid of Apple, getting rid of snacks. It's at least letting me know, all right, now we're supposed to suck. We're not supposed to have hype. We're not supposed to be good. What's their record ever since that boat trip? Like 4-24 or some shit like that. Something nuts.
It's pretty astonishing. And of course, I doubt the boat trip has anything to do with that. It's just one of those really funny stats you get to throw out there.
Yeah, it really is. And you can't talk about the Giants without throwing that stat out there. But, I mean, if I'm a Giants fan right now, I'm actually more at peace with what they're doing to their team than I was at the beginning of the season when they're trying to build and be good and then still sucking.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on that earlier. I think if you're a Giants fan, you got to be happy right now. You accept this season as a wash, and you go from there. And really, if I were the Giants, I'd be trying to trade Odell. I just think he's such a distraction. He's going to get your highest value picks-wise. And I do think this draft is very talented in certain points of that. And that's something we'll get more into, I think, in the offseason. But
I think what the Giants could do with Odell is kind of a Herschel Walker type trade with the Cowboys.
I thought you were saying with the Cowboys, like make a
No.
Easy there.
No, like the Herschel Walker trade for the Cowboys in the early 90s that pretty much, or late 80s, I guess, that established who the Cowboys were in the 90s. Not that they're going to get a full draft out of out of Odell Beckham.
Right, no, I definitely see your point there.
It would be a big trade. I mean, they'd get a lot of picks out of it.
Yeah, and so and obviously they need to get a quarterback. I mean, whether it's drafting someone next year, I think a lot of that relies on if this Oregon guy leaves, because I do think they're going to be a top 2 draft pick. But because, they are in kind of the scary situation, this is why Giants fans should be upset, is they had the second pick in the draft last year. They went with a running back. While he looks excellent, it doesn't really matter when your offensive line stinks and you have no quarterback. And that is the case for the Giants now.
Well, Jake, we already kind of touched on this a little bit, so let's move on to the Texas-Oklahoma State game. We're going to talk about this a little bit. That'll wrap up college football for us, and then we'll move on to strictly NFL after this, and mostly just Cowboys stuff for the most part. But Texas-Oklahoma State, Jake, at Stillwater, at night. It's a trap game. Texas is number 6 in the country. And the good thing about this game, though, is that if Texas does fall, they're still in the shot for a Big 12 championship. They are still have a shot at the Big 12 championship with West Virginia and Oklahoma both having a loss. This is setting up okay for Texas, although you don't want to use that one kind of grace loss that you have on Oklahoma State.
And really, if you're Texas right now, your goal is the college football playoff. I mean, because that is in sight. Yes, I don't think it's going to happen, but it is there.
I don't think so either. But Oklahoma State, I feel nervous about it. I tried every type of – I did so much research on this game on Oklahoma State trying to pick Oklahoma State to win this game. I can't bring myself to it because their only Big 12 win this season is against KU, and everyone knows what KU is. And so I couldn't bring myself to be like, oh, well, you beat KU and Texas. Those are your only 2 Big 12 wins. I couldn't bring myself to do it, but this game scares the hell out of me, Jake. I mean, am I the only one feeling this? Are you feeling this too?
Oh, no, I'm with you. I mean, anytime you play in Stillwater, it's a hostile environment. They always show up for Texas. Even when they had Vince Young, they had to come back from some big deficits when they were really good, and Oklahoma State was, I think –
national championship
team. Yeah,
team.
one of those years, and it was the Rose Bowl year, too, where they beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. And both those one of those years Oklahoma State was pretty decent. One of those years they weren't, and those were both really tough games. So I don't expect this to be an easy game. We don't really know how well Ellinger's going to have with his throwing arm, and so that's obviously big. I do think they're expecting him to play, but how healthy is that shoulder going to be? Will he be able to will they be able to take deep shots? I think if they're playing him, they obviously will. But it's not going to be an easy game. And this Texas team is a team who, if they do blow you out, it is by really starting that process in like the third quarter. And so that means
in the second half.
This is more than likely going to be a close game going into the second half at night on the road in a very tough environment, which I think will make this a close game. I do really think Texas will win this, but I do think it's going to be a very close game that goes down to the wire.
Yeah, kind of like the Baylor game last week. And Jake, you and I, we've both seen an Oklahoma State game in Stillwater, a great atmosphere, great fan base, except for one guy that sat behind us. We don't have time for that story. We can't go into that story.
We'll go into that another time.
No, next week. We'll make room for it next week after the Oklahoma State-Texas game is over, and we talk about it next week, okay? But it is a great story. It's really fun. So
consider that your teaser.
Yeah, a little teaser for next week, but we'll go into it. I'm laughing about it right now. Defenseless receiver. But anyway, it is a great atmosphere. They do have a good fan base, except for one guy. And but anyway, Jake, this game scares me, and I think the one matchup Texas is just obviously favored in is their defense over Oklahoma State's offense. I think that's going to be the deciding factor. If Texas's defense plays as dominant as we know they can, then Oklahoma State's not going to be able to score, and it might be a fairly low-scoring game actually. But
yeah, no,
Jake,
I expect it to be tough. I
expect
it to be tough, just like winning at K-State was. It's a young Texas team, and it's on the road at night in a hostile environment. That alone makes me think this will be a tough game.
All right, Jake, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to do devil's advocate, or do you want to do your film session?
I just want to go through I'll make it very brief on the film, just because I did watch it. I would like to just do it, and we kind of teased it twice. So I decided to look at Baker Mayfield this week, and I'm just going to do very quick kind of notes I wrote down as I watched a couple of his games. And so, because Baker Mayfield's a guy me and Tanner both agreed on we thought pre-draft was the best quarterback in the draft. Even though he's an OU guy, I can't help but love Baker Mayfield. I love how competitive he is. But I decided to look.
I love it when he grabs his crotch.
Yeah, that is such a great moment because it's just out of pure. They disrespected him, so he's going to tell you to suck his dick.
It was great.
And it's fantastic.
It was great. It was great.
And you can't say they didn't ask for it.
No, they didn't shake his hand. He literally offered to be pleasant to KU. He wasn't gonna, shit on him like he did. And then they didn't shake his hand at the coin toss, and he was like, "All right, suck my dick. I'm gonna put up 5 touchdowns on you."
Yeah, exactly. So I looked at him, and the first thing that really sticks out that he does better than any other rookie quarterback, and it's not even close, he makes decisions fast. He can hit that first or second read within, 2-3 seconds easy every time. And not only that, he can make them even if they're tight window throws because he has a fantastic arm. I think he has the best arm out of all the rookies because it's consistent. He consistently can hit hard passes, and he knows it, and he'll take chances, and they typically pay off. He has really good footwork as far as his original drop back and then being able to step into his throw. And he doesn't really shy away from hits like a Rosen does, for instance. He's not a pussy like Rosen.
Right.
He will take the hit and make the throw. Really, the biggest thing that sticks out where he needs to get better, and it's not surprising considering the scheme he played in college, is after the first or second read isn't there, he kind of gets happy feet and he'll leave the pocket. He'll start scrambling out of the pocket, even if he doesn't need to. So he needs to learn to trust his O-line a little bit better and more scramble, make things happen when he needs to, because when you do it when you don't need to, that can lead to holding penalties, and a lot of the things we've seen kind of plague the Browns because they've been putting up good yardage, but not great points these last couple weeks.
Right.
But I think overall, if you just look at him on film and what he's done so far for the Browns and what he did in college and why he was drafted number 1, I think he has a chance. I still think he has a chance to be a superstar in his league. I already think he's an above-average quarterback just as a rookie. And I think when you have a guy who's the ultimate competitor like he is, it's going to do good things for your team because all he wants to do is win, and he will do whatever it takes. I mean, he took a huge shot to the head that was an illegal shot to the head, and he just got up and threw the ball at the guy basically and just chested up to him. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I love that in a quarterback. It's not just in any player, in a quarterback.
To me, he's been the best rookie QB so far, and I don't think it's close because even though they haven't been consistently putting up a ton of points, he has consistently been putting up good numbers, and some of the other problems are just more related to the team. And I think they are going to if there's any guy who can turn around the Browns, it will be Baker Mayfield. And I think he's already shown why the Browns liked him, why they went with him number 1.
No, Jake, I agree with you. And a quick take right now, who wins, Pittsburgh or Cleveland at Pittsburgh? They tied for week 1.
That's tough. I think it'll be close, but I think Pittsburgh will probably win that one just because they've kind of been riding the train a little bit, and they're just so they're so talented.
They're coming off of a bye.
Yeah, and I mean, Mayfield, it's going to be a tough environment. It's a terrible field as far as like actual field quality. And I just think the Browns defense, that'll be one of those games where they let down and it turns into a shootout. And when you have Antonio Brown on one side against a rookie quarterback, I can't. And Big Ben in those shootouts, he typically plays pretty well. I expect that to be a pretty high scoring game, but Pittsburgh to win, pending the weather. If it's an ugly weather game, it'll be low scoring.
All right, well, Jake, let's move on to the moment of truth, and we're already kind of running a little long, but it doesn't really matter all that much. I don't care too much. I just don't want it to be like a 2-hour-long show.
No,
but Jake,
and it won't be.
Let's go real quick. I'm going to go, you go. The end of the Dallas game against Washington, there's 52 seconds left. You run 3 plays. You have 1 timeout, and you settle on a field goal. That gets a flag, and it pushes you back 5 more yards, and you miss that field goal. You lose the game. I will continually say this, and I said it while the game was going on. I didn't need to go back and was like, oh, shit, that was a really stupid decision. During the game, I was livid. Like Romo said in the broadcast, you have all day here. You do have all day. You're at the 50-yard line. You have all day with 1 timeout left, 52 seconds. You should be able to get a minimum of 5 plays off. With the timeout, you should probably get 6. And maybe 2 shots to the end zone. The Dallas Cowboys decide to throw it down the middle. They decided to throw it down the middle twice and then do a run play to Ezekiel Elliott for 2 yards and settle for a tie, taking it into overtime. And I thought that was the most idiotic, least aggressive, no ball having, pussy flesh having play calling that you could have by Linehan and Jason Garrett. And it epitomizes the season. It just epitomizes the season. I can't even really be all that mad about it because I saw it coming.
Yeah, and it epitomizes what they've stood for as coaches their entire time and why I've wanted them fired for 5 years now. And not only that, but you're right now in a stage where you're trying to figure out if you need to pay Dak Prescott. And you say that you trust him, but yet you don't give him an opportunity to right his wrong from his mistake with the fumble and go out there and win that game. You don't even give him the chance. And that's why I've consistently said I won't know personally if Dak is the guy until they actually get a coach that has a pair of testicles and runs the correct scheme with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. And right now, it's scary right now if you're a Cowboys fan, because you need to figure out if you got to be looking at a QB in the next 2 years, or if you can trust Dak. And right now, you don't know it. And I think there is going to be coaching turnover, and the coaches are not making it any easier for all of Dak's faults. And I am not trying to defend him here. I'm just saying it is a lot more that goes into it than just Dak. And that play calling at the end of the game was pitiful. I mean, you said it, and people are blaming the call because it was a bad call, but I don't really care. Don't put yourself in that situation. You shouldn't be settling for a 47-yard field goal. It's like Jerry tells him, go for it on 4th and 1. So all of a sudden he goes for it on all 4th and 1s, but then he gets another chance to be a pussy, and he's like, well, he didn't say about this situation, so I can just run 2 plays in 50 seconds here and a timeout. I mean, it's not going to win football games, and that was a chance to be first place in the division and at least give yourselves a chance of having hope this season. And unfortunately, the division's so bad, there's technically still hope. But I've said consistently through this season since it started, is I don't have hope with this coaching staff, mainly Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan. I have zero hope in them.
No, I'm with you, Jake, and it can only be said over and over and over again so many times. So, Jake, let's go ahead and move on. The game was what it was. We both called it. We both called Washington winning that game. Yeah. So it's not like I'm necessarily all that surprised. So, Jake, let's move on to the big news surrounding the Cowboys this week, the Amari Cooper trade for a first-round pick. And I texted you whenever I found out about it. I was livid. I was upset. I'm still not happy with the trade. I've calmed down a little bit. I've done my research, and I've definitely found more negatives than positives to it. I hate the trade. I absolutely hate it. You and I, we're going to go into devil's advocate here, and you're going to play the positive side. I'm going to play the negative side. You're going to be the angel on the shoulder. I'm going to be the devil on the shoulder, and pessimist versus optimist, whatever y'all want to call it. That's what we're going to do. And, Jake, from this moment on, I just want to say fuck you, and I hate you.
All right. Well, and again, disclaimer. This does not mean I was actually for the trade. I am not as against it as Tanner is, but I, at the end of the day, don't like the trade. So I just want to, again, disclaim that. Disclaimer?
All right. Jake, I'm gonna send my first point out to you, okay? My number one point, and this maybe not necessarily in order of how bad things are, but my number one take, I think personally, it's a minimal immediate impact. It's not like he's the missing piece to our Super Bowl run. I don't feel like he's the answer to all of our prayers when we only have a year and a half with him on his contract with the Raiders. They picked up his 5th-year deal, so we have him for at least a year and a half, counting this year. And so I don't see him making that move, him just being that missing piece. Oh, we found our number one guy. He's the answer to our prayers. All right, well, let's spend a first-round pick on next year's draft on getting this guy to go ahead and plug it in. Our answers are all of our problems are solved now with Amari Cooper lining up as the number one, even though he's not even our number one receiver. We still have Cole Beasley, who is technically still better than him stats-wise.
Yes, so basically, my rebuttal for this going to start out with to what you said is I think this is more of a long-term move in the eyes of the front office. And here's my biggest reason why. Here's the first-round wide receivers drafted since 2015. DJ Moore, who's been very shaky so far for Carolina. He's had some fumbling and drop issues. Calvin Ridley, who's living off the fame of that one game where he had 2 or 3 touchdowns, but has been non-existent in most of the others. Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross, Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell, Amari Cooper, Kevin White, Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, Brashad Perriman, and Philip Dorsett. Like 90% of them are terrible. Terrible busts.
That's a bad list. It's a horrible list. And Jake,
so
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I want to play off that to kind of go into my point, and then you can go into yours. So I think the Cowboys know they need a wide receiver. They need a number one, and I think their plan was we'll draft one next year. If you look at the wide receiver class for next year, it's really not that great. It is not a great offensive draft class, and it's especially not good at wide receiver and quarterback. And so I think the Cowboys were like, let's just give up a first, get a guy that we think can be a number one receiver for this team. And I think it is more of a long-term play. They want to get an extension on him eventually, probably during the offseason or something. And I think they just viewed this as their next year's first-round pick because keep in mind, he's not some old receiver. He's 6 months older than Calvin Ridley. And he has 2 Pro Bowls under his belt as well.
So, and that goes into, this isn't my next one, but I did have this as a note. I'm going down my list a little bit. Cooper is going to be a long-term investment. You don't trade a first-round pick if you don't want to sign him in the future, okay? So why give up that first-round pick when these are the notable free agents coming out this season? Devin Funchess, he's young, not maybe the number one guy that you want, but Devin Funchess is an option. Kevin White, he seems to be coming on a little bit better at the Chicago Bears. Josh Gordon has not signed an extension with the New England Patriots. He will. I don't know what they're going to do. They may re-sign him. I don't know. But Josh Gordon is whichever. But he is by far the most talented of all these wide receivers, of just pure talent. Golden Tate, he's older, but he's had like 9 consecutive 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and you know what you're going to get out of Golden Tate. Yes, he's older, but you might want to get away with less money with Golden Tate and still keep your money or still keep your first-round pick, get him for less money, and still have probably better production than you would out of Amari Cooper. That's who I would kind of like in the notable free agents. And then you have Randall Cobb coming out. He's still fairly young with the Green Bay Packers. He's going to be a free agent unless, of course, all these guys could re-sign, of course. They're just at the last year of their contract. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to be free agents, but those are the notable free agents. And my thing is, you could keep your first-round pick. You could sign one of these guys instead, young or old veteran guys, maybe for a little less money. Instead of paying Amari Cooper the long-term investment, still keep your first-round pick, and everything's kind of a wash. And you might get a better number one receiver in a Golden Tate or a Josh Gordon or a Randall Cobb than you would an Amari Cooper. And also, Cole Beasley is also set to be a free agent this year as well.
Yeah, so I threw Josh Gordon off the table immediately. I really don't want that disaster in Dallas. That we would sign him to a big deal.
He's just talent.
And he would last 2 games, and then he would be suspended. Yeah. And I've seen the Cowboys try that train too many times. I'm done with those types of players.
I'm with you. I'm with you with the Josh Gordon. I only added him in there because of just pure talent-wise. But yes, I agree with that.
The only 2 receivers on your list I would have a conversation about, really, Randall Cobb and Golden Tate. I do think Golden Tate is getting to that point where someone is going to overpay for him in the free. You have to keep in mind the free agency market in the NFL is crazy. Randall Cobb is more than likely, in my opinion, going to sign back with Green Bay because they can't let him go, or Aaron Rodgers might actually just retire. So I think Randall Cobb is a lock to stay in Green Bay, and then I think Golden Tate, someone's going to overpay for an old receiver when it comes. To me, he's just the classic case of that, and he's the classic case of the Cowboys would sign him and he would just do nothing, and he is actually older, and so
he's up there.
And so I do think the Cowboys. If you're in the front office right now, you got to keep in mind, I tried to put myself in the mind of the front office. And so their idea is they have a job and they want this team to be good this year. And to them, this is going to have some type of immediate impact as far as it should at least open up things for Michael Gallup and Cole Beasley. Theoretically, it should. Because even though Amari Cooper's stats don't look great this year, if you look at his total yards for the year, he missed a game because of a concussion. I think the last game he missed that traveled to London, it was some weird thing. And so he played one game where he only got 1 snap. He got the concussion, and then he missed the London game. 2 of the games he's played this year, I think he's played 3 games. He has had 100-yard receiving games in those 2 games. So it's not like he's done nothing this year. He's had 2 very good performances this year. And I think they not only think this could help the receiving core as a whole and help offensive production each game, but they think it could open things up for Michael Gallup, who's starting to emerge as a rookie, and open things up for him. And then also for Cole Beasley out of the slot, because right now if I was the opponent, I'd just be like, let's just double Cole Beasley, and they're not going to do anything. Their next best receiver is a rookie. And so now,
Right.
theoretically, they're hoping this should open things up. I'm not saying I think Scott Linehan is smart enough to actually make this work, but I'm saying
Yes.
I think this front office,
There it
with the
is.
moves they've made in the last several years, I think this front office in the scouting department of the Cowboys has at least earned enough of my respect in that department to see this play out before I completely trash them like some people have.
And I'm glad you brought up the scouting department because, Jake, the scouting department has done wonderful, especially in the first round. Let's just name off some of our first-round picks. We've got Leighton Vander Esch, possibly looking at a defensive Rookie of the Year candidate there this year. Okay, Taco Charlton, not the best rookie season, but he's coming along. He's still a role player. He's not necessarily doing great, wonderful things, but he is making an immediate impact on the game. Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, he is the top 2 running back in the NFL. Byron Jones is slowly becoming the best corner in the NFL, one of the most unspoken corners in the entire league right now. Every time you listen to an opposing coach or offensive coordinator talk about this defense, one of the first players they go to is not Sean Lee, is not DeMarcus Lawrence, but it's Byron Jones and how well he's played this year. Zach Martin, he was a first-round pick. He's the best guard in the NFL. Travis Frederick, unfortunately, he's not playing, but when he is playing, he is, in my opinion, the best center in the
this
NFL.
offense would probably look a lot better this year if he was playing.
Yes. So all the last, what was that, 5, 6 first-round picks that the Dallas Cowboys have drafted have all contributed immediately, and we just threw that away for a guy who I don't believe, me personally, do not believe he's going to make that big of an immediate impact as these first-round picks that we have had in recent years.
Yes, but again, I kind of go back to my first point. I think if you look at next year's draft, this team needs offensive players. Even though you could look at safety as a possible need, I think if you're drafting for defense, you're stupid. They're like top 5 or top 3 in almost every statistical category in the league on defense other than turnovers. And the defense is, I think every Cowboy fan would agree on, the defense has not been a problem at all. It's been a huge asset. No. And this draft next year, to me, especially at the top of the board, is a defensive-heavy draft. I do not see any receivers I like, and I looked at it. I didn't write the names down. I could go further into that if I, wrote them down. But I do think it is a consensus that the receiver draft next year and the quarterback draft and really offensively as a whole is not as strong. And the biggest need right now for the Cowboys, I think most people would agree, is wide receiver. So I think that this was just making their draft pick early, and a guy that does at least have 2 Pro Bowl seasons under his belt and is still very young. He is the age of what most rookies are.
Yeah, he's 24 years old, and I do like that. That is probably my favorite thing about this trade is that, like you just said, Jake, he's 24 years old, and it is considered a first-round pick. I still don't agree with it.
I wouldn't have given up more than a 2 or a 3.
I wouldn't have given up more than a 4. I would have given a 4 or less.
I think I think a 3 would be worth it. I think a 3 would definitely be worth it, and I would consider a 2.
So going into my next point is that for me, and you talked about the quarterback play with Dak Prescott and maybe relieving some pressure off some other wide receivers, Jake. In my opinion, and I think I'd get these two guys. Is it David Carr or Derek Carr? Is it Derek Carr?
Derek Carr.
I think it's Derek Carr. Okay. So, me personally, this season, I don't think his quarterback got any better or any worse. I think Dak Prescott and Derek Carr are the same skill set of arm talent and playing right now. I just think it's the same guy. So, I don't think you're not trading Amari Cooper to the Green Bay Packers where he has Aaron Rodgers that can make him better. You're not throwing him to Tom Brady where he can just automatically, a quarterback can make him better. You're getting the same quality of quarterback throwing to Amari Cooper in a really bad offensive scheme already for a passing game. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that I don't believe that Dak Prescott is going to become that much better because he has Amari Cooper. I don't believe Amari Cooper is going to become that much better because he has Dak Prescott. Especially in this scheme. Even if they were in a better scheme, I still don't think one player makes the other player elevate his play any more than they already have.
Right, which kind of brings me to a point I have, which I kind of already mentioned as far as, the scheme issues. I mean, I agree with all those issues. But I think this puts a faster timetable on Garrett and Linehan because I think the front office sees this as a team who should be doing a lot better, who should have more wins. And I think the excuse that this coaching staff has had on the offensive side is this receiver experiment that we decided is not working. Well, now they've gone out and they've gotten a wide receiver. And even though this year, kind of on what you just said, with not changing a skill, not changing, a big change in quarterback or a big change in scheme, because John Gruden's scheme is very similar to what the Cowboys are doing. It's terrible.
Awful, yeah.
It's old football that's outdated now. But, Cooper has produced this year when he's played full games. He is medically cleared. He's good to go. And, I mean, he has the right type of attitude of what you want out there. He's had 2 100-yard receiving games this year. Cole Beasley is the only one with a single one for the Cowboys this year, and it was just one. So, I'm ready to let this play out. And to me, I would give up an entire draft if that means it speeds up the timetable on Garrett and Linehan getting fired.
Yeah, Jake. You know what? That's one thing I can't argue with you on. So here's another point that I have. And this is just going to be a lot of stats, so try to keep up the best you can. So, yes, we know about his 1,000-yard receiving seasons, his first 2 seasons, but not his most recent seasons. His last 2 most recent seasons, and including this one, so this one's not over yet, but recent production, this last season, last year, he had 48 catches, 680 yards, and 7 touchdowns. The only good thing about that stat line is the touchdowns for a number 1 receiver. Not just a regular receiver, just a number 1 primary target receiver. 48 catches is not a lot. Dez Bryant was the Cowboys' leading receiver last season with 69 catches, 838 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And we thought he sucked. We thought he was done, his career's over, and we looked slow and led the league in drops. And he put up much better numbers than Amari Cooper did last season. This season, you've already kind of dove into it a little bit. 22 catches, 280 yards, 1 touchdown. The leading receiver, of course, is Cole Beasley. 33 catches, 350 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And my biggest thing right now is that you're using a first-round pick on Amari Cooper, right? So that's basically essentially what you've done is you're using a first-round pick. Well, Cole Beasley's your number 1 receiver right now, at least statistically. He was undrafted. So an undrafted player is already outperforming a first-round pick. And then the next best wide receiver on the team is the tight end, a 7th-rounder, Jeff Swaim, who he is right under there. He has like 19 catches for like 200 yards and a touchdown. He's like right underneath your number 1 pick, and he was a 7th-round pick. So value-wise, I'm not seeing the value of a first-round pick in Amari Cooper that the Cowboys saw.
Right, and again, I'm not going to argue about the value. I mean, I think they overpaid in this situation, but kind of to start to wrap this up, I think when you keep mentioning Cole Beasley about being a number 1 receiver, the problem with that is, I'm sorry, but you can't have a true number 1 be 5 foot whatever he is. You can't.
Yeah, 5'7". No, I know. I agree. You can't have your
You know how
guy be your number
difficult
1.
that is for a QB once that wide receiver gets past 10 yards, how much harder it is to throw to a guy like that. And, you look at Amari Cooper, and he has pretty good height. He's like, I think 6'3". He's fairly fast. He's got good acceleration. And we have at least seen production from him, in his career and with his youth. I mean, his youth is the number 1 thing I'll just keep bringing up because to me, they're just using a draft pick on this guy. And kind of a final point, and this really applies to a fan base less than it does you because I know you're not like this, but the Eagles offered a second. If they would have got him with a second and he would have torched the Cowboys, it would be all hell broken loose. All hell broken loose. And I think this front office just said, you know what? Let's go for it. We like this guy. We've seen what he does on film. And the Cowboys need a receiver who is over 6 foot and actually talented. And I think something you and I can define a common ground is Amari Cooper is talented. It's just a matter of whether or not the Cowboys can actually get him to produce.
No, yeah. And Jake, I do want to end it with this last little stat. It's just real short. Cowboys traded first round for a former Pro Bowler and Amari Cooper. Lions traded a fifth rounder for a current All-Pro defensive tackle in Snacks Harrison. I think that's where the value is. You have to try to, and I know the Giants are in a different mode right now,
and it's two very different positions.
Very different positions.
But I do see your point.
Defensive tackles, Jake, they're very important in solidifying a defense, and defense wins championships. So you have that defense with an offense like the Lions. Okay, yes, the Lions aren't going to win a Super Bowl. I don't care who their quarterback is or who's playing for them, but you get what I'm saying. And so, but yeah, that's just a quick little stat to throw out, for people. I just think value-wise, if you're giving away draft picks, it's got to be for value. It has to be. And giving away a fifth-round pick for an All-Pro defensive player, that's where that's at. Not a first round for a former 2 years removed Pro Bowl wide receiver. So, but I'm going to end off. That's all the points that I have. And so
just the last thing I'll say is what I agree with you, but I'll just kind of say again, if you go to the free agent market, you're going to overpay. You're going to get shitty value. You're going to overpay for a long-term deal for a Golden Tate, and then he may be good for a year, but then you're really going to regret that deal in his second year when he really starts to decline because he's old and you're paying him $20 million or something absurd. And you're going to overpay in the free agent market. I think they don't like this receiving class this year. They don't want to have to wait 2 or 3 years to even draft a receiver and then wait on that guy to learn the NFL game because rookie receivers is one of those positions where receivers really struggle. I think they liked him, and I think in their mind this was with the first pick of the regular season draft, the Cowboys select Amari Cooper. That's really what this was. Yeah. It wasn't the Roy Williams deal where they gave up a first and a third, and it wasn't the Joey Galway where they gave up 2 firsts. They gave up 1 first-round pick. If it doesn't work out, I'll criticize them because I have criticized this trade with you, but I'm going to at least give it a chance to breathe because I do trust this front office, and I think they like what they saw, and hopefully it will turn out to be good in the long term.
Yeah, well, Jake, that's going to do it. And that's going to end Devil's Advocate. And, Jake, we can be friends again. I love you, man.
Fuck
and that's going to be our show. And don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. And keep spreading the word. And we'll be back with more Fanboys. Thank you, and good night.